everyone. Welcome to my show, Conversations with Friends, where I interview real people who are also my friends that are doing some extraordinary things. I'm so excited to have my beautiful friend, Kris Seraphine, Ph.D. here today. She is a goddess, marketing expert, and an author, and so many other things. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk a little bit about all of the amazing things that you're up to.
Oh, thank you so much. This is really such a cool idea. My goddess, galactic mermaid of Sirius. We've known each other such a long time and have been in each other's worlds and just have always admired each other's work. But what I can say about, since the time she first met me 10 years ago, it's funny. I feel like I'm the same person doing the same thing, but now I kind of know what to call it, right? I mean, that's like the whole part of this marketing and being in this reality that we're all creating and co-creating, and there's a lot of shifts that happen, right? I believe that Megan found me through my book, Return to Enchantment, Your Guide to Creating a Magical Livelihood. So what that book is about is a big part of my work, which is working with chakras and archetypes and connecting that in. So the spiritual, the psychological, and the physical, and the subtle energy bodies, which, I'm sure you would agree too. If you want that sort of life juice and change and amazing abilities, those superpowers, it's very integrative. You can't really separate one from the other because we're living in a physical realm where we do need to have embodiment, right? We can call in all of that beautiful energy from the field. We're all one, we're all a part of it. We know this from science, but we are definitely earth beings and we have to be embodied and call in those energies through our bodies. So that's what I've been teaching from a few different standpoints. And that particular book, Return to Enchantment, is about marketing, creating content, how to run a business as an entrepreneur, especially if you are magical entrepreneur, like so many of the people that I help. And basically what I do is I go in and shine my light and attract people like Megan and other spiritual healers, leaders, coaches, therapists, priestesses, shamans, writers, and I help them monetize their magic without undervaluing their services. So that's the other part of it, is the whole piece around prosperity and that we don't have to be broke to be more spiritual or to be enlightened. There's nothing enlightened about living in lack or scarcity. So it's been an interesting journey of, I think we've known each other probably close to 10 years by now, or at least 8, or maybe around 8 or 9 years, but it's been a while.
It was so amazing and synchronistic how I found your book. I believe I found it on Amazon, and it was right about the time that I had just completed my Saturn return. I had left my job, I had left my marriage, I had moved, and I was just starting like the very smallest seeds of my business. And when I found that book, it was like, oh my God, this feels so real. It feels so true. Like the way that you explained how to set up our week, for example, Monday being ruled by the moon. I had no idea about that before. And you supported me in figuring out how to create this really feminine flow to this entrepreneurial business. And of course, it took me several years to get to the place that I'm at now. But I really have to say that your book was a huge milestone and inspiration in getting me to where I am. And then synchronistically, you had an event at I believe it was your previous home, like a women's circle, and we got to meet in person. And it was just even more magical. And I just love all the work that you're doing. And I love that you talked about how entrepreneurs that are magical, it's a little bit different. There's a little bit more of a a different flow for that type of a field. And I love that you speak so much about this because it's so important. And I love that you shared about the prosperity piece and abundance and how we don't have to live in lack. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about that. What does it mean to be in this goddess energy and to be abundant and to be prosperous? And are there any specific goddesses or archetypes that would support us in that?
There's so many. So, Megan and I are both mermaid women as well as goddess women. I work with so many goddesses, and part of it is because of being a channel. And I know so many of you who are probably watching this right now, you're probably a channel too. Some people know that they are, some people aren't aware of it. But I feel like it's such a natural part of us when people are like, well, I'm a channel, as if, I'm not saying it's not special to be a channel, but I don't know. I feel like we're all channels, and it's all a matter of, practicing. So what I would say with any practice, being in the beginner's mind and remembering that it is a practice. We know that like the true master of anything knows that they don't know everything. And when you go in, like whether you're practicing working with your chakras and expanding them and healing and clearing them, a lot of people are like, well, that's just really basic stuff. But I can't even begin to tell you that I practice that almost every day. And I have since I started working with my chakras and yoga when I was 13 or 14 years old. I'm 54 now. So, but I always go back to the basics. But when we work with a goddess archetype, and I feel like that's a good way for a lot of people to start by approaching goddesses to work with, whether you're channeling, to heal and to build your energy. So that way you overflow that energy through your work, through just being your radiant self, right? I literally will just go into stillness and see what goddess comes in. But I do offer classes on the goddess every month. And there's a different one every month that comes in and that I call through. And so for December and part of this month, January, we've been working with Isis. And Isis, what we do is we call her in the morning together as a group. And I channel for them and bring in the messages from Isis and any, like healing energy or meditation that she wants the group to have. I like doing it in a group because there's an accountability factor. I mean, I do this work almost every day, but to actually have to show up for other people, it's like, okay, it's 6 a.m. and, I'm kind of feeling a little tired. And wouldn't it be, and sometimes I do sleep in, right? We have to listen to our bodies, but yeah, I just get up, light a candle, because to me, the candle represents, I'm honoring this time as a sacred space. And then I use essential oils like this one. I've been using rose today. And then I put some in my palms, because when you want to create new neural pathways in the brain and new habits and new mindsets, the more of your senses that you use during those practices actually embeds that new habit and that new mindset faster. So, the sense of smell, it bypasses all filters. It goes right. If you want to imprint, I use essential oils a lot. And then you can look up the essential oil for that particular goddess that you're feeling called, or who's calling you. It's probably a little bit of both. And, before I even call her in, I'll put a little on my palms, inhale the scent and be like, okay. And then I usually call the goddess's name 3 times. And then I'll also anoint parts of my body and chakra areas to, again, call her and embed her energy into my body.
Well, that was such a great explanation, Kris. And what's really interesting is that in mermaid consciousness, which I teach, you utilize 3 or more senses that gets you into the present moment. But I had no idea about this other piece about the senses and the neural pathways. And it all is just so fascinating. And what I love about you is that you have such an expertise and experience and just this natural flow when it comes to ceremony and ritual and intuition. And you also have this very grounded, powerful, like strong businesswoman aspect. And I feel like that's so needed in the spiritual community right now because, there are so many channels, there are so many people doing, really incredible things. But when it comes to actually managing a spiritual business and putting your work out there and having the space to create a monetary exchange for the work that you do, you're just such a powerful example for all of those things. So was it always like that for you? Did you always feel like you had this passion for spirituality, or was there some shift that happened at some point where you went from like the corporate world into the spiritual? Or I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background.
Oh, okay. Well, the interesting thing about me, and I think I'm a lot like you, where I swim in a lot, mermaids were very adaptable, and, we can have kind of a chameleon like energy. So I do still work for corporations. I just work for myself as a consultant. So I guess you could say, even when I was like an employee, I was always approaching my job with an entrepreneurial kind of mindset and spirit. And I think that helped me move up the ladder really quickly in my career. It helped me to make money. And then, because there's wisdom to be learned from corporations, particularly about monetization and also about, creating business models. But yeah, so for me, I've been in marketing and business development and business design since I was probably about 26 years old. So about half my life, I've been doing this work. What's been nice is I can look at like my business as these different layers of reality and layers also of monetization. So I'm a firm believer in having multiple income streams, having passive income like oracle cards, books, meditations, music, like you're selling physical products, or you're selling, because I started selling teas too to go with the goddesses. So you could have that special tea ritual, tea ceremony with the goddess. Again, using all your senses to get those neurons juiced up. So I guess you could say I started in corporate, but I never really, I started reading tarot and, like I said, doing yoga, reading auras and all kinds of stuff at like age 12, because my mom was really into that stuff. She went to all the psychic fairs and all the, she just was super into that 1970s, 1980s movement of, spiritual, personal self-development. So everywhere she took me, the psychics all said, your daughter's really psychic, like you need to do something. And so I've never, even in the corporate world, I was never really a corporate person. And literally, like every company I ever worked at, it was so funny. The CEOs would always, I'd be doing my job, and then they would always call me in and, hey, will you read my cards? Will you read my chart? Because I've been reading astrology too. I've been studying astrology for about 25 years. So I was always, had my kind of witchiness, mermaidness. I just didn't know what it was called. It was not intentional. It wasn't completely unconscious, but it wasn't like, I'm going to call in the goddess. It was like, I'm going to call in, the archetypes. It was just there because it's a layer of reality that we're always living in. If we decide to see that, we can always live in the magical world, no matter whether we're, a cubicle warrior or an entrepreneur, just totally blazing our own trail and doing something. It doesn't really matter. It's more about how you see yourself and how you put yourself and put your energy into the work. But yeah, so I have like corporate accounts that, I do this kind of work for, and then I have my own, my own classes, my own products and services as a mentor for spiritual healers and leaders to help them get their content together, to get their business design together. And, even more than that, I feel like the just being there to, like you said, to energize and inspire people that they can do it, that you could do it your way. You don't have to do it, the way that we've all been socialized to think about work, which is no fun. We like pleasure.
Absolutely. And we're going to go back to that topic of pleasure in just a moment, because I feel like we have a shared love for that. And I love everything that you shared, and especially about doing things our own way, and that we don't have to completely exit the matrix. Like, we can work harmoniously in it, like these beautiful mermaid shapeshifters. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about, what does it mean for you to be a mermaid? What is it like to be in mermaid energy? How does someone know if they're a mermaid?
Oh, well, you need to say something about this too. That, I was so loving mermaids my whole life, and mermaid consciousness and mermaid energy is all about, to me, combining the sacral energy, that juiciness and that pleasure and the flow and that radiance that comes from the sacral chakra with the heart. And the heart is all about, how we're bringing heaven to earth, how we are really being one with our passion. I want to hear more about what you think.
Yeah, I feel like you're right on. And I love that you brought it back to the chakras and connecting the womb, the sacral chakra, and the heart. And I also feel there's this deep connection to the throat chakra. And it's interesting because the whole archetype of the siren, and like the shadow aspect of mermaids, and the shadow side of the dark feminine, I feel like what that comes from is this disconnection from the heart. My own work, Mermaid Consciousness, and activating all of the chakras with Mermaid Consciousness, it's really about taking on the archetype of the mermaid, all the qualities of the mermaid, the innocence, the embodied feminine, the sovereign sensuality. And it's sort of like, when you're on this path to ascension, if you welcome in the energy of mermaid consciousness, it's like you're sort of putting on this mermaid etheric body that's giving you not only protection, but also giving you these mermaid-like qualities, so that you can kind of swim through the initiations of ascension. And once you get to this certain point, it's like the mermaids are the guides to get you to where you're going. And then you can sort of start to adapt what your own character is and what your own avatar is. Of course, taking all those qualities of the archetype, but then, also adding your own.
I love that. That's beautiful. And I really love, that's one thing I've always loved about your work, because you have all these different layers of reality connected to the mermaid. I mean, there's this mermaid of Sirius, and then there's this definite mermaid that feels like when I look at you, that's very tropical and sensual and earthy, you know what I mean? And I love that. And I can't wait for your work to come out, because I feel like so many of us want to be more magical, because maybe we haven't quite discovered yet that we're already there, that we are magical. But it's that one little piece, like you said, that we put on this. It's not like a costume, but some kind of like an energetic and archetypal adornment, where you are that essence moving through the world, approaching everything through that lens and that frame of being. You live life differently than when you don't have that frame.
Oh, it's so true. I love that you called it an adornment. And it's almost like, how can you just glide through life thinking, what would a mermaid do in this situation? It's very different than if you're approaching it in this like non-magical, like serious way. And so I feel like one of the gifts of the mermaids is pleasure and the enjoyment of pleasure. And so I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that. I know that you really advocate for pleasure, and you feel like it supports our business practices and our self-love and everything else. So what does it mean to really embody the energy of pleasure for you and incorporate that into various aspects of your life?
Well, I think, first of all, people look at pleasure more as guilty pleasures. Like, we tend to, because of our society and being in this patriarchal framework and viewpoint for so long, that pleasure is like, well, that's what you do after work. That's what you do on the weekends. And the rest of the time you're supposed to be a slave to the grind. And, pleasure is this very, to me, it's not this evil, guilty, like, ooh, I had French fries and ice cream for lunch yesterday. You know what I mean? There's that kind of like guilty, like pleasures are supposed to be these things that are wrong and bad. And then, of course, sex, God forbid you masturbate. You're going to hell in a handbasket. I mean, come on. So the whole thing around pleasure is really, to me, very subversive, which is why, welcoming goddess or any sort of archetype, it could be masculine too, that the Dionysian, Shiva, there's all these gods, that are about pleasure, and Hermes, Mercury, about masturbation, and androgynous sexuality and homosexuality. And it's like pleasure is an essence that awakens the senses, that brings us back into presence, right? But we have to change our minds about how we define pleasure. To me, having, putting on makeup is a pleasure, right? Putting on, lotion on your body is a pleasure. I mean, I feel like making lists of pleasures is a really great thing, stuff that you enjoy, stuff that you love, and having lots of pleasure breaks. I know that was in my book. I talked about that a lot. And this idea of playfulness and the joy in pleasure as sacred pleasure, not just, gorging my face with chocolate pleasure, because that kind of goes more into addiction. And that's, kind of a compensating behavior for anxiety. So if you have real pleasure and you're practicing sacred pleasure in your life, those kinds of anxieties aren't going to take hold. And like you said, sovereignty. I mean, that's a huge thing with Mermaid consciousness, with Isis, Hathor, all of that sovereignty energy is very much connected to pleasure, the sacred pleasure, not the guilty pleasure. Pleasure elevates everything to the divine frequency. And when we're in that divine frequency, we're not looking outside of ourselves to soothe, whether it's because food is obviously delicious and healthy and pleasurable. Sex is all that, but everything can be twisted when we're not in our true sacred pleasure, when we are in that, needing something to fill a void within us. And I know I get that. Like, I'm definitely a comfort eater for sure. Yeah. Curious to hear what you would think of that as well, Megan.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on so many things. First of all, I love that you talked about the difference between like sacred pleasure and guilty pleasure. And I feel like we've been so socialized in our society with all this matrix and patriarchal programming to have so much guilt and shame around these topics that it's almost like you said, we have to secretly do them. But there's a way different vibration than, opening your fridge at 2 a.m, gorging yourself on chocolate, or having like this beautiful experience, putting it on the most beautiful plate and enjoying it and honoring the experience and how it feels in your body. And, for me, what I found is that the more that we connect to this sacredness of recognizing that we are God in human form, then that pleasure is an act of worship to God, which is in our unique expression in the body. And I just love all your wisdom that you have about archetypes and myth and everything. And I feel like it's so important for us to know about this, because it's like all these same characteristics, they've been repeating over and over again. And so once we start to understand these archetypes, we can sort of be like, oh, I really like this characteristic and I like this, but maybe I want less of this. And we can start to pick and choose to create our own avatar. But I really honestly, I'm on the same page with you about how like pleasure and pleasure breaks and play are really how to stay in the feminine energy. And, working with the goddesses really supports us in that. So do you have any specific goddesses that you're working with right now?
Okay, so right now I'm working a lot with, I talked about Isis, I'm working a lot with Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is the Hindu goddess of abundance and beauty and pleasure, wealth, all of that. And what I love about the Lakshmi energy, it really is about how to experience abundance in the everyday, because a big part of her mythology and iconography is around giving and receiving blessings and giving and receiving abundance. And that's what creates, I don't want to say true prosperity, but I'm almost going to say true like fame, because, traditionally, that's what Lakshmi was in India. She was the goddess that they would petition for fame. And they had a very different definition of fame, because fame had to do with how healthy were your children, how happy was your home life, and how is how harmonious is your marriage and your relationship. And in the homes in India, they keep it clean and decluttered because they believe that Lakshmi will not come into a home that's dirty, that's not beautiful. So there's always some form of beauty. And it could just be just the way you order something or have something laid out. It doesn't necessarily have to be an altar to Lakshmi. I feel like what I love about her is I like to call her, and then I have a tea that I developed with my beautiful herbalist, Suzanne O'Gara, called Lakshmi, the tea of opulent living. And really, she's the embodiment of sustainable opulence, because it's not about excess. It's about everything in balance and harmony. What you give, you receive. What you receive, you give. I mean, that's like one of her, her hand, mudras, one of them. There's always gold coins. So there's this hand that's giving the blessing. So we're giving the blessing. We're giving blessings and wishes and prayers for people that need that Lakshmi energy. And then the other palm is always open to receive, where we receive the gold coin, we receive the blessings that we are seeking. And she's red. So I did, reds and pinks and golds are her colors. And I have my red candle for her. I have also a red lotus tea light. And then I showed you my rose. So rose oil is a great essential oil to use for Lakshmi. She's also associated with the pink lotus. And I think, some people can even use jasmine. There's different kinds of essential oils you can use, but I do a lot of chants to Lakshmi. You can use, mala beads, those prayer beads, to do 108 rounds. And it said, do that once or twice a day, with just clearing your mind and inviting Lakshmi in. And that definitely opens the flow for prosperity. And it also, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take that energy from her and really install it in my root chakra, because I find if I feel at any time, any form of scarcity or lack mentality or fear around that or tension, Lakshmi is a great reminder to slow down and just root in, root into the root chakra, root into the earth, and all of that abundance. Really, it's an inside job. You are the portal for your own abundance. And I feel like Lakshmi is one of the most potent goddesses to really feel that and embody that. So she's a beautiful, beautiful one to call in. And as far as mermaid goddesses, like in February, I'm doing my 30-day goddess. It's like a sadhana. So we're doing Yemanja. who is the ocean goddess from West Africa, who was brought over during the slave trade to Brazil, the Caribbean, parts of the United States. And she is this great mermaid mother of unconditional love. And, again, that I love her, like, her chant is West African, it's from Yoruba, and it's Odoya, 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 which means, oh, mother of the fishes. You're honoring her as the mother of all, because we all start off in the womb in amniotic fluid. So we are mermaids from the time we are conceived in the womb. We're these little floating beings. So I just love that. I've worked with Iemanjá. I did my field work for my PhD in Brazil. I went there, I lived there for 3 months and studied with some high priestesses and high priests, learned a lot of the rituals for the different Orisha. And Orisha translated as angel of the head. So Iemanjá has a lot of beautiful myths, but one of the ones that I really love is there is a god who is born deformed, and his mother, she's also a primal mermaid goddess, but she's like goddess of the swamps and the mud. She's the very primal mother called Nana. So Nana gives birth to two sons, and one is the rainbow serpent god, and he's beautiful and glorious, and the other son is deformed. He's the god of pestilence, disease, and also compassion for people that are ill. So she pushes him away. She goes, "You're ugly. I don't love you." So he goes to kill himself. He goes to throw himself in the ocean, of course. So Iemanjá catches him and says, "I'll be your mother. I'll take care of you." So it's a beautiful story of just acceptance. So, in Brazil, she is really seen as this great mother of all. And, that god, I believe, is named Omolu, is the one who is the god of disease. But, if you go, when I went to rituals, because I'm not initiated officially into Iemanjá, I went through the very beginning stages of initiation. And so when I would go to rituals, always the one who was in trance for the god Omolu would always come and dance and like send me like lots of love, because I'm an embodiment of that goddess, right? That because I've worked with her so much, and I know her drum rhythms, I know her dances, I know her chants. So anyways, in February, it'll be really beautiful to bring that in. I mean, I know recipes, they showed me all kinds of amazing, beautiful things that I asked for permission to share. They're all in my dissertation, but they're going into my mermaid book, which is the next book coming out. So I love that we're on this path together of, synchronous mermaid beauty.
So much gold in everything that you shared. And that's amazing that you got to go to Brazil and participate in all of these ceremonies. And I just love the richness of all of those stories, and how it brings us back to these really deep lessons about the human experience. And I love that you shared about the unconditional love of the divine mother, and how the ocean is like that holy womb, and how we all start as mermaids. And going back to Lakshmi, when you shared that phrase, sustainable opulence, this like light bulb went off in my head. I was like, oh my God, that's the perfect way to describe it. Because like you said, the guilt leads to the excess. It's like we can have all of our feelings, but we don't need to have guilt and shame. Those are programmed responses. But I love everything that you shared about Lakshmi with the giving and the receiving, and how you reframed fame. There's just so much there. And I also just really love how you continue to bring this knowledge and take people on these journeys, because I feel like it is a journey. It's like you build a relationship with these goddesses and the archetypes and the ascended masters, and we learn so much from them over time. So that's so beautiful.
We do. and to share that energy with other people. I think that's really sacred and holy and divine, and to me, I love doing this and monetizing what I'm doing. It just feels natural. It just doesn't feel like, oh, yeah, it's like getting paid to be who you already are, which is pretty freaking amazing. I don't know. I think that's kind of what we all want. And, I think at times I sometimes do feel a little bit, I don't know, schizophrenic's too strong of a word, but I do, because I'm so sensitive and open as a channel to all these different energies and other people's energy, that I feel like that there are just so many gods and goddesses that just come through and want to be heard. And so I feel like there's so much space in this space for people to come in and do this work. So yeah, one of the things I'm working on right now is a certification. Not that people need to be certified, but maybe, hey, here's my method. Take it out in the world, make money, and help people. And at the same time, I feel like it's youthifying, I mean, if we look in the mirror and look at each other, it's like, our beautiful features as women, and and the men we know that do this work, it's like everybody looks really young, everybody looks vibrant, and it's not about looking necessarily young, maybe it's more youthful, or I don't know what the right word is, but you're opening up like this fountain of radiance, and it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter if you're again in corporate, it doesn't matter if you work at a gas station, you could do this work and whatever, make another income, make it your whole income. But it's just such a way of life. So this whole paradigm of like trading your life for money, that's like so old paradigm. And we're seeing it like all crash and burn. So what if we supported each other and ourselves, creating wealth by being who we are, whatever archetype that is, group of archetypes, and just spreading that out in the world, and everybody's making money doing something they love and having fun and co-creating like we're going to do. I'm so excited. Anyways, that's my thought on that.
That's the way, Kris. And I love that you brought that up, because I feel like so many issues around lack and about the fears around money and investing in ourselves, it all comes back to that old paradigm of trading time for money. And obviously, if you feel that you can only make money from this 9 to 5 and you only have so much to work with, it's going to feel scary to invest in yourself and to give to other teachers and healers and mentors. And I feel like the more that we show examples of, we can step out of the matrix, we can do it our way, we can support each other. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I felt called to create this podcast, is because so many people are doing so many amazing things. And the more that we create this network, it's like we can all support each other and rise together. It's a very different paradigm than just like one person at the top and everyone just having to go along with what that program is.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what is your human design? Because I've really been like doing more human design readings for people, and I'm curious.
Yeah, human design is one of the things I'm still like not yet exploring, but I'm a manifest generator. So I'd love to know more. I don't know hardly anything about human design yet.
I love that. Yeah, that makes sense. My Seraphine, my daughter, she's also a Leo and also a manifesting generator. I know a lot of manifesting generator women, very dynamic, super successful like you. And so like I'm a generator. So in my job, my purpose in life, if I just go, and obviously it just, to simplify it to just this one thing, but I kind of, what I like about the human design thing is how you could take that, and really it applies in so many ways. But as a generator, I create energy that is used by people to help them create stuff. So really, the only time a generator is of no use to anybody is if they're not happy. So literally my purpose in life is to be happy, is to feel good. Because when I'm that way, I'm generating energy and it's going out to the people that need it. And I'm also getting, fed. And it's like, so I feel like there's so much about energy and goddess that kind of ties into human design. And so I've been kind of contemplating that stuff. So for a manifesting generator, you do have your own power source. So you are part of this generator thing where you are making energy for the world, but you're also a manifestor. Now, manifestors also produce a kind of energy. Manifestors, they just speak, they say, okay, I'm going over here, everybody, who's coming with? So it's a beautiful thing to have both of those working together. So, I find that manifesting generators are very multi-hyphenate. I mean, I am pretty multi-hyphenate. That's why when I found out that I wasn't a manifesting generator, I was like, oh, okay, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Because again, we can't define ourselves by one thing. It's like saying I'm a Capricorn and that's all I am, It's like, and we know that astrology is so much more complicated and intricate than that. But yeah, so I was just curious to see, but it makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And, I've been a student of astrology for so long, and lately I've been studying the gene keys as well, which is astrology and the I Ching together, creating this our hologenetic profile, and just any kind of wisdom about the self and understanding who we are. Like you said, it's like we all have this piece, this key. So it's like every time we study someone else's transmission or their work or like all these different ways, it gives us more of the puzzle. And
sounds interesting. I just bought the book, actually. I haven't read it yet, but
yeah, I actually have it right here, surprisingly. Yeah, I was just reading about one of my gene keys, which is empathy. And each one has like a line and a part, and there's different sequences. So you can understand your life purpose, you can understand how to make money, how to have better relationships. And like, it's just like every time I read it, it's like this light bulb goes off. Like with empathy, it's healing through listening. And it talks about how like the energy of the divine mother creates this space of just witnessing, and all the witnessing compassionately takes all of the fears and just puts them into oblivion just by like being the witness. And it's just like, wow.
That's cool.
Yeah. So keep me posted on that journey, because the gene keys is just so great. I could talk to you all day, and I
I know.
again, but I know we have other things that we need to attend to today. But for those people that are just meeting you, what is the best way to connect with you, to learn more about your work, to work with you? How can people find you?
Oh, thank you. So beautiful. My website is krisseraphine.com. So it's KRISSERAPHINE.com. And, you can find my book and all my courses, my tea, everything is on there. My tarot and astrology services, and my goddess business coaching is on there. And I'm on Facebook pretty regularly, and Instagram. And you can find me, I think Instagram, it might be krisoster.phd, because I'm not married anymore. So I went back to my maiden name, but some of the stuff is Seraphine, some of it is Oster. So that's how you'll find me. But I have a beautiful free offering on my website that I'd love for you all to check it out. And it's called The Plunge. And it's basically a whole thing about how to find the core brand archetype essence in your business. And it comes with like a video workshop where I walk one of my clients through theirs, so you can kind of see how it's done. But it's a PDF with like different prompts, and it's really fun. So I would definitely recommend, if you want to kind of dive into this world of what's another way of doing business that's not like the bro patriarchal, let's kill ourselves way. I think it's a great place to start. And obviously my book too, Return to Enchantment. And please, yeah, I'm on YouTube. Connect with me anywhere, anytime. I would love to hear from you all.
Wonderful, Kris. I'm definitely going to have those links to your book and social media. And the plunge is just amazing. Like, that's such a beautiful, generous, free offering as well. Because I feel like, once you know like who you are in your business, you can go so much further. It doesn't feel so scattered. So that's really exciting. Can you share briefly what some of the archetypes are?
Oh, sure. So the way I approach archetypes, I've never done like an archetypal quiz kind of a thing. I mean, I could, because they're definitely, I associate archetypes with the 7 main chakras. Like for me, the crown chakra is the sovereign. So, when you're in that sovereign archetype, you are functioning as the overseer and the container and the vision holder of your brand and your business. Now, when you want to go into creating connection, then you're probably going to go to the heart chakra archetypes, which are more about connecting in, like you said, listening with empathy, being, part of that more connected self. So there's different archetypes based on the chakras, but how I have most people approach their business is I ask them, who were your favorite characters and what movies and stories when you were growing up? And then from there, we look at, okay, so if you were into, let's say, The Little Mermaid, that was like your favorite story, and you're seeing how those themes of that story are reflecting in your life and business, you can take that energy and be more intentional with it. Like, oh, so I can come through, as the essence of the mermaid, which is, again, about using my voice, about moving through the world with pleasure and sensuality and power, and being empowered by that, as opposed to being ashamed or hiding it. So, to me, every character carries that seed of the archetype. So the archetypes are pretty infinite. So that would take another hour.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I love that you brought up The Little Mermaid, because that was one of my favorite movies growing up. And also, and I talk a lot about that in my upcoming book, Mermaid Mystery School, but it's like that whole mermaid wound, which I feel like we could do a whole different podcast on, about like how the mermaid archetype can often like sacrifice family, friends, body parts for some man that's like not even able to live in their world. And I feel like that's how we heal from the mermaid archetype, is really diving deep into falling in love with our purpose. And so I love that your work is really supporting so many women and men in discovering who they are and how to approach their business. So I'm just so grateful for you and all the wisdom that you provide for the world. So thank you so much for being here today, Kris.
Thank you for having me, Megan. I love you so much. And I love your work. And I look forward to all of your beautiful oracle cards and books and classes. I can't wait to work with you.
I know we're going to have so many amazing collaborations in the future. And Kris is going to be writing my introduction to Mermaid Mystery School as once I get that over to you, the new manuscript, because there's been a lot of changes. But, I definitely appreciate you and your time today. Is there anything more you'd like to say before we end?
Nope. I'm all complete. I'm good.
Me too. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us. And if you want to learn more about my work, check out my website at meganmermaid.com. I'm also on social, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all at official Megan Mermaid. And you can check out my new course, Galactic Leadership Training, on my website, meganmermaid.com. I love you all. Have a beautiful day.
Bye. Thank you.